I hope, even if I translated this in French, that you can understand it in English. So first, hello and welcome to everybody. Thank you for attending this workshop. And I have the pleasure to give you a training on the negotiation, on the Harvard negotiation project together with Patrick Flessner from Lytix Capital. So I will more focus on the framework, and Patrick will discuss the negotiation with investors. It will take around 25 minutes for my part, then I give over to Patrick, and then we have time for questions. And what I want to say is the training, it's a 2 or 3 days course. So we are trying to give you the overview within 90 minutes. I'm sure that some of you will have some specific topics they want to discuss deeper and in a smaller round. So please don't hesitate, talk to me after the workshop in the next weeks, and we will try to help you. Yes, and to myself, my name is Laurent Kessli. I'm the managing director of the MXL program. I used to work for companies like General Motors Europe, Ringier Publishing Group in Switzerland and in Eastern Europe, Amazon.com, Scout24, and I have founded several companies in the past. The first time I heard about the Harvard negotiation project was around 30 years ago, and as Serena said, I translated it into French and gave several times the course in French. And now I would like to welcome Patrick.
Yes, hello everybody. I'm Patrick Flessner. I'm here representing Metro as a managing director of the Metro Group in the innovation department. But more importantly, I'm also representing Lytix Capital Partners, the fund that you probably know. I'm on the later stage fund size, investing into growth companies. I am a lawyer by training and have worked for international law firms like Friedrich Bruckhaus Deringer and some M&A venture capital boutiques over more than 10 years. So I'm quite used to negotiating contracts, especially, and certainly also as an investor, I very often face negotiation situations where I believe parties too early tend to part ways, while there's still room for making efficient agreements, good agreements. And while Laurent focuses more on the general aspects of getting to yes, I will shed some more light on a few aspects from an investor perspective where I believe you can get the most out of it. And afterwards, I'm looking forward to our discussions.
Cool, great. So let's start. Like it or not, you are already a negotiator. We are all negotiators, basically. In today's world, with flatter organization and teams that are decentralized, it's very difficult to direct people without negotiating. And it's even more true now with the COVID-19 virus. We need to negotiate, and the framework that we are discussing today is basically a very good one. It's quite simple. It's based on 4 principles, and it's basically a framework where you learn to deal with differences. So without having to bargain or taking position, you are trying together with the other party to find a solution to the problem. Because before the negotiation method, you were supposed to fight against the other party, and the Harvard process made it like become a partner in searching a solution. And that's a very interesting thing about this model. And it's not about eliminating conflict. You have to deal with conflict, but it's really helping us to transform this conflict side by side with the other party. And the goal of it is to produce wise outcome in an efficient and amicable manner. So what is negotiation? It is a process, it takes time, conducted by several parties that try to reach an agreement. And let's go into these 4 principles. The first one is separate people from the problem. So we all know that when we start to negotiate, emotion are playing a role. And with this principle, we try to separate emotion and the problem. The second one is to focus on the interest and not on position. So we will learn what is a position and how we can focus more on the interest laying behind position. And that's the basis for the discussion. The third one is, once you have understood the interest of the other party and the other party understood your interest, you try to move toward a solution. And one way of doing it is having a creative phase, which is inventing options for mutual benefits. And the fourth one is making sure that when you are reaching the agreement, you have objective criteria being used for closing the agreement, of course. So what is the first one? Separate the people from the program. Before you enter a negotiation, you should really see the negotiation and the other party as a partner. It's not a boxing match, and you're not trying to knock it out, but really think mentally, have this image that together with the other party, you are finding a solution. Make the negotiation a joint project and try to be nice and friendly. It's not about being over friendly, but it's about having a good relation so you can work on the problem. Now I have a quick poll. Serena, maybe you can help. I want to know what for you are the main human factors that prevent you to be successful in your negotiation. Maybe you can take a few seconds to answer this. Any feedback? Serena, you are on mute.
Yes, we are on 55% voted. So I'll give it to like about 75, 80%.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, great. Thanks for all the feedback, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, 82%. So I'm going to end and launch it.
So thank you for your feedback. Bad communication is most named, unrealistic expectation, and uncontrolled emotion. Okay, of course, all these elements are important in the discussion, and we will go quickly over each of them. But what I want with this poll is really to have you reflect how next time when you have a negotiation, try to spend some time to prepare and make sure that you improve on what you perceive as being a weakness currently. It's important. And don't forget, even if you talk to Metro or company, a big company, you have people in front of you. Negotiators are people. So there will be moments where the emotions are coming. And the best tip I have here is first, know how you react to what are the triggers you have that make you becoming angry. That's the first thing. And this is something you can do in the preparation. And during the negotiation, try to leave your ego aside. The way when I look back at most negotiation I had, at certain points, you want to be smart, you try to be, to show how intelligent you are. And I think It's not necessary. It's about solving a problem and making sure that you are doing this together with the other party. So that would be for the emotion. The prejudice one, it's prejudice is when what you think the other side wants is not what the other side actually wants. So this occurs because during the preparation phase, you are trying to understand how the other party is and what do they want. And basically, you will probably see differences during the negotiation. So make sure you make this transparent. I mean, address this and say, hey, this is the assumption I have about what you want. Tell me, are they correct? Or tell me, what are your expectation? And the same thing for your ones. Make it transparent and clear. It will just improve the quality of the discussion you have, and you can avoid to be heard sometimes by what the other side is saying, because they understand you. The third one is the perception. So how what you say is what is understood by the other party. And you have many reasons. I mean, you can have different culture, you have the language barrier, you can have strong beliefs that are different. It makes your word are maybe understood differently by the people. So here again, make sure that when you feel the other party is hurt, to clarify why is that. And by doing this, by being transparent, you also show how you respect the other party, how you can be soft on the relation and being very focused on the problem. The unrealistic expectations that was met, I think it's true. I see this especially with company like Metro. When there is a startup negotiating with Metro, they see Metro as a large organization with a lot of resources, etc. It's not always true. People have to save money, have to allocate the resource efficiently. So make sure you understand. And again, it's a communication thing. Discuss with them and say, hey, you know, if we have an agreement, I expect you to market my product. So can you market it? Do you have the resources to market my product? And the last point is the communication. Yeah, I mean, this is pretty obvious that every time when you say something, you are not sure you are heard in a similar way. So and especially now when you communicate through emails, through Slack, through WhatsApp, you have so many channels where the quality of communication can get lost. On the other hand, I think that negotiating via video conference is very good, because basically every negotiator sits in a trusted environment and it gives him or her some reassurance. So it makes also the people more comfortable about negotiating. Sorry, the next slide. So I want to mention an example of what happened last week within Metro, because I have a Metro country that is working with a startup and has been working with them for several years. And they call me and say, hey, Laurent, can't you help? We are trying to expand the business of this company, but they don't want to reduce the price. And I was surprised by the fact that they called me. So I talked to the founder and he told me something completely different. And I realized basically the perception were different, the expectation were wrong on both sides. They didn't talk to each other. They were just haggling over position. So what the other side was saying, hey, Laurent, but you know, I talked to this guy and they told me we will sell to 10,000 customers. But now I'm discussing with the supply chain and the sourcing people, and they don't even guarantee to me that I can sell to 1,000 customers. So I have to hire people for the onboarding, for the customer support, and I cannot cover my fixed cost if I only sell to 1,000 customers. But instead of telling this to the Metro people, he was just saying, no, I cannot lower the price. And Metro was surprised because they were saying, hey, if we are Metro and if we tell him we expand his business, he should lower the price. So here, both parties didn't even mention that they were working successfully in the past years. They were not trying to salvage the relationship. They were just haggling over position. So I hope this example illustrates what you can do and not do during the negotiation. In summary, for this principle, just prepare. Very important. I know, Patrick, it's also part of what you will say to founders. Preparation is so important in a negotiation. Second, forget your ego. Try to understand the perspective of the other party. Put yourself in their shoes and make sure you discuss about personal issue. If you feel hurt, tell them. It's very important, and you need also to understand the other point of view. By doing this, you accept the legitimacy that their concerns is part of the problem you are trying to solve. And be sure that by understanding the other party, it doesn't mean you agree with them. It's not a weakness to show that you understand their point of view. On the contrary, it helps you really to have a very good negotiation in an amicable manner. The second point I want to mention is focus on interest and not on position. So here there is a guy saying, okay, just to get the negotiation off on the right foot, I don't intend to concede anything. And that's really a big problem in some of the negotiators you have faced in the past or you will face in the future. You have this kind of people that think, okay, negotiation is either I am a tough guy or I am a soft guy. And basically you recognize this type of negotiator because one is asking for concession all the time, or the other one is ready to make concession on the relationship side, on the matter. The one is looking for a kind of win of the contest of will. The other one is trying to avoid a conflict about wills. So, but both, in the end, both are taking position, and you try to understand their interests, to negotiate on the interest level. So how do you do that? First, try to identify your own interest and be able to express them clearly. And the second one, to identify the interest of the other party, the best way is to ask the question, why and why not? So why does the other party want to deal with me? What is their motivation? And why not? Why they don't have taken this decision for the moment. And that's why we discuss with them. And by asking these two questions, you will see already a few interests emerging. The second step is, once you have this interest, try to understand the consequences. So if the other party is taking this decision, what will be the consequences? Will it be criticized by their people? Will they get the support of their group? What kind of impact they can expect? It's also very important to have this consequence in mind, to understand how the other party will put emphasis on some interest or not. And in the end, you will be able to understand during the negotiation their interest, and make sure that after you have expressed after you have asked them what are your interests, that maybe you repeat with your own words their interest. It's it's important on two levels. One, to make sure that you understand it clearly. And second, it's about the signal you give to them that you are trying with them to solve their problem. So what are the summary of this focus on interest? It's very important to be very clear about them, to maybe define a map of interest, yours and theirs, to acknowledge, of course, the interest of the other party. One way also is to focus on the future and looking forward, not backward, because by talking about the future, you involve much more the other party. So you make them also responsible to be part of the solution. And you are not trying to blame them of what didn't work in the past. Be concrete but flexible about your interests. So as an example, if you want a sum X of money for your service, you could say, okay, I want 5,000 euro, but maybe you can say it's one sum, or you can say it's okay if you pay this in 3 rates, or we can agree on a fixed part and maybe a bonus if everything goes well, etc. That's a kind of flexibility you can already express in your interest. And don't forget, be hard on the problem and soft on people's. It means make sure your interests are well handled, because if not, you will not have a long-term agreement. At a certain point, you or the other party, for the same reason, will try to break this agreement. So, third part is invent option for mutual gains. And what it is about is once you have all this interest, you will see that, okay, how can we manage now to have an agreement about that? And the first step is try to identify the common interest you have with the other party, because by having these small gains quickly, you will improve the chance of finding a solution for interests that are not so obvious at first. And the way to do this, it's really worth to say to the other party, hey, let's take time, let's take 2 hours to be creative, to have a brainstorming session where we try to generate ideas. And as in a good brainstorm, nobody is criticizing the other party. You are not trying to evaluate if these options are good or bad. You are just generating ideas. And they are basically, by doing this in such a way that you have this creative phase, and even later you start to evaluate the option, or you can take even other people to evaluate the options, you are avoiding that a premature judgment is given. So someone saying, I don't want to do that. No, you say, no, wait, let's create some idea first. You avoid also the traps that some people are looking for a single answer. It's much better to have several options, because you can even go to the other party and say, hey, look, we have 3 options. Which one do you prefer? It makes also, it's a nice way to make sure that the other party is part of the agreement, and we will sign it. The third thing that people sometimes think about negotiation is that it's a fixed pie. So zero-sum game. What you gain is what the other party will lose. By providing several options, you show that it's not like this. And there is also sometimes a psychological problem of the people, because if they have a creative idea, they may think, you will jump on it and say, oh, thank you, this is your offer. And the way to do this is again to say, no, it's a creative phase, we don't judge it, and we will evaluate it later. So it lets people being creative. For the summary of this, as I said, identify the common interest very early, so you can share them and you can tell to the other guy, hey, we agree on this. Let's make this interest now our goals in the final agreement. Avoid premature judgment, search for the single answer. I mentioned that. The one I want to add is basically avoid to communicate that solving their problem is their problem. Everything you can do where you can communicate that you are trying to solve their problem is very important for the other party. And the last one is make their decision easy. And here again, the fact that you may have several options on the table maybe makes the decision easier to take. And by being creative, I just wanted to underline that some people are interested in the zebra stripes, other people are interested in the volume, so in the elephant. The last principle I want to discuss is in an agreement, insist on the objective criteria. So you always have in the negotiation interests that conflict. So how do you solve this? And the best way to do this is really to bring standard of fairness, objective criteria, scientific metrics to tell the people, hey, we are trying to find an agreement on this objective criteria, so nobody will try to later to say, it was unfair to me, I was tricked into this agreement. By insisting on objective criteria, you make sure that the agreement will stay for a certain time. And the other element about trying to be objective with criteria is sometimes we want so much to close and to reach an agreement that we forget basically how this will be executed. And I remember I had to deal with a very, very large food company. And I wanted this agreement so hard because I said, hey, it's a game-changing thing. It will make it easier for me to raise money and to have new investor in my company, that basically I had an agreement, but in the end, the result didn't match my expectation because I didn't focus in the agreement on the way it would be executed by the other party. So think about that. It's important to have objective criteria and to measure not only the agreement, but how it will be executed over time. That's it for basically for the 4 principles. That's a way you can have an agreement. As a wrap up, I just want to say, prepare your negotiation path by focusing on the interest and assessing both your personal weaknesses and what you perceive about the other party at a personal level to avoid getting too emotional. Understand who you will negotiate with, especially with companies like Metro, where you may discuss for a product. For example, if you talk to the department developing software, they will be interested into solutions that integrate with other software. If you talk to the country management, they may be interested to bring a solution that helps their restaurant immediately. So they are not so much interested into integration of the software. Then separate people from problems, focus on the interest, even the option for the mutual benefit, and in the end, reach an agreement with objective criteria for the execution. That's it. And once you have that, you can make sure that you have a principle-based agreement achieved. And for corporate reason, I don't show the face of these people, but this is a good example of 2 people that use position to negotiate. And it's definitely not what the Harvard Negotiation Project is about. So thank you for your time. And I want to hand over to Patrick.
Thanks, Laurent. I think you need to stop
I'm not
sharing.
sharing anymore.
So for everybody, hi again. I hope you enjoy the beach here. I think in the current crisis situation, I thought a little bit of beach is nice to see, but let me dive into the negotiation topic again. I think I'm going to share some hopefully tangible real life examples how principled negotiation works in connection with investor discussions. While I believe that we have examples on each of the 4 topics Laurent mentioned, I focus on the interests instead of positions, because I think that is most tangible to understand and comes across many times when I talk to founders. So let me dive in. First of all, I think getting to yes is at the end of the day about communication. It's what I call the art of communication. You need to listen to the other party. So I used to say, speak last. I also tell myself, speak last, listen, and ask why before starting to talk. And the way you negotiate with investors also shows how senior you actually are. And remember, investors want to give you a lot of money, maybe millions, and they want to be sure that you are trustworthy and senior enough that you can deal with the money and invest it in a way that is value creating. So this topic, soft on the people, is very important, because if you're not soft on the people, that creates a huge distrust and a huge topic in the negotiations. While I agree with Laurent on the topic, you can be pretty hard. Focus on interest, not positions. I have 2 examples. One is a founder who wants to raise 4 million, and you can imagine maybe in this current crisis situation, many founders want to raise money or need to raise money. I think they do not want to raise money now, but they have to. And the founder position is, I want to raise 4 million. And the investor says, well, I only want to invest 1 million. So the immediate reaction could be, we part ways because we cannot come to an agreement. But this is only the position. And here again, I think what you need to ask is why. And if you look at the founder again, he needs 4 million in order to break even, but actually, given his cash burn, he needs the 4 million only over time. And the investor perspective here is, well, the current situation is so risky. I'm not sure whether the company can actually achieve the plans. So I would rather start with an investment of 1 million. And if the company performs, I'm also willing to invest even more, maybe up to 4 million. And then if they talk to each other and understand the interests behind the positions, they can come to a solution, which is, let's define milestones. You invest 1 million now, and if we reach our milestones, you can invest or have to invest more into our company, so that at the end of the day, the investor invests 4 million in this company. And this only because the people focus on interest rather than on positions. Another example, which I find is pretty difficult to understand for many founders, and this is a real life example. Imagine a company wants to exit, or the founders want to exit, and the existing investors and the founders agree that they want to sell the company for 100 million. And then the whole exit process fails because they cannot find someone who who buys the company for 100 million. And the company needs additional funding. And now the founders talk to the existing shareholders again, and the existing shareholders say, well, I cannot invest in a valuation of 100 million. And this is difficult to understand for founders. And there are actually 2 positions here from the investor perspective. One is, I want to sell for 100 million, and the other is I'm not going to invest on a 100 million valuation. And the reason being that investors invest in order to make returns. And let's assume they invested in the company on a 33 million post-money valuation, so they can make 3 times their investment on an exit valuation of 100 million. But now the founders ask for additional funding on the 100 million valuation, and the investor might realize, if I invest now, I can maybe sell the company for 120 or 130 million. So I will not make sufficient returns on my additional investment. So the position here is 100 million, but you need to understand the other party. You need to understand what are the interests behind this position in order to understand whether you can come to an agreement. The second topic I wanted to touch upon is BATNA. BATNA is really important. It is a term for the best alternative to a negotiated agreement. And this is, I think, something even more important when you talk to investors. First of all, you need to know what are the alternatives if I cannot raise money from that investor. And I described 3 potential BATNAs. First is talk to other investors too, so that you know if this negotiation fails, I at least can raise money from other investors. If you cannot agree on terms, which can be an outcome even if you understand the interest behind the positions, maybe you can turn the company cash flow break even with the existing cash on bank. There's an alternative, so you don't have to raise. Or the other alternative could be, if I cannot raise now, maybe my runway is sufficient that I can exit the company now instead of raising money. And so knowing your BATNAs is, I think, in my view, for investors and more importantly for founders, one of the most important aspects you should always consider when negotiating with investors. And yes, Laurent said I would touch upon that as well. Prepare, prepare, prepare. I think you are well advised to really prepare before you start negotiating. And also here, I absolutely agree with Laurent. The negotiation starts when you send the first email, when you start discussing topics at the table. Before you actually think you start negotiating, you have already started, and you need to be prepared. You need to know your partners, and you need to know your own interests in this negotiation, and you should put yourself in the shoes of your counterparty to understand what are the counterparty's interests and also its partners in order to come to a mutual beneficial agreement.